Kitty has practiced exclusively in workers' compensation for her entire legal career, over 35 years. I've known of Kitty the entire time I've been practicing, since 2000. I got to know Kitty, I guess, formally introduced at one of the conferences a few years ago. I was introduced to her in the big room with all the vendors, and very impressed with her presence and her demeanor and her experience. And about 2 years ago, had the opportunity to sort of start talking to Kitty about maybe joining our firm. And we are so happy that Kitty is part of our firm and our team. And it certainly wouldn't be the same without her now. Kitty practices exclusively representing employers. So people might assume that automatically means that Kitty wouldn't be able to make a difference in the lives of injured workers, at least not in a positive way, but she does. And the way she does that is because she has a really good sense of fairness, and she has this knack for holding her clients to a little bit higher degree, a higher standard that is not typical of other defense attorneys. She's constantly seeking out leadership opportunities. She's always getting involved. She is not standing on the sidelines ever. She's the first one to raise her hand and volunteer. She's constantly looking for opportunities to be involved and to learn and to teach what she knows. I think a lot of that stems from back in Kitty's prior life. Before she practiced, she was a school teacher, and I think that experience as a teacher impacted the ways that she's always offering availability to teach us and other attorneys and doctors, and serve on panels to educate legislators, adjusters, employers, any issue involving workers' compensation. And whether she's on the panel or not, it's unlikely that you can get through a session without hearing her voice at some point, because she's going to get the microphone and she's going to ask a question. So she keeps everybody on their toes, no matter what's happening. She asks the hard questions. She's not afraid to really drill down to what's the solution to this issue. Is there a solution? And if there's not, why not? Let's talk about it. I have the benefit of probably close to daily getting to experience sort of the positive impacts that Kitty has on me personally and the firm as a whole, just by being sort of the wealth of knowledge and experience that she brings to the table. That comes with her wherever she goes, and she's willing to offer that to everybody. So she is that one we go to when we have that really complicated question or difficult situation, whether it's a workers' compensation question, whether it's an ethics question or what have you. She's not limiting that just to our firm because she works here, but more importantly and surprisingly for us, she stands right next to us every day in the trenches. I mean, she will not turn down a request for help or a task, no matter how menial or, on the other hand, or how complicated it may be. She's willing to jump in and help and offer the benefit of her knowledge and experience. She served on the Workers' Compensation Advisory Council. She served in that capacity under two different governors. She's involved in legislation. She discusses workers' comp legislation with members of the General Assembly, even when she's not on the advisory council. She's constantly studying the law, the appeals board cases that come out, Supreme Court cases. She's studying the AMA guides constantly. She's constantly going out and meeting doctors. She has relationships with pretty much every doctor who has a regular opportunity to touch workers' comp, and she's seeking opportunities to meet any other new doctors out there, prospective physicians who are considering workers' comp or considering offering their services to workers' comp patients. Life is just a series of successes and failures. Kitty understands that you have to learn from your failures and don't repeat the same mistakes twice. And that's sort of what I've learned from Kitty. It's not always about winning and losing. I think a lot of attorneys think that it is, but Kitty understands that the bigger picture isn't always about just winning or losing, and because losses are inevitable. Kitty and her clients are never surprised by a decision in a case, even if it's a loss, because Kitty will have already accounted for that as a possible outcome long before it ever happened. Kitty is an amazing mentor. I know this firsthand because she's helped me personally. She has taken brand new attorneys and she has offered her time, and she's also offered all of her education, knowledge, and experience. She doesn't just sit down and talk to these attorneys. She takes them with her wherever she goes, whether it's at a settlement hearing or whether it's to an evidentiary hearing or trial or deposition. She brings them with her at all times and makes sure that they understand not just how to conduct themselves professionally in front of judges and in front of other attorneys, but some of the things that are sometimes the hardest that we deal with, like where to go, like where to park and which door to go in and things like that can sometimes wreck your morning and cause an attorney to be late for something. Kitty remembers all of those things, and she instills tons of confidence and assistance in these young attorneys. And I think she really loves it. And that's why she does it. I don't think she does it out of obligation. I think she really enjoys it. And I think that's why probably her first calling in life was to be a teacher, because I think that's where her heart is. I think she loves to teach, she loves to educate, and she loves to help people.
I met Dave Dunaway in the fall of 1974. I got my undergraduate degree from Tennessee Tech in the spring of 1974. And Dave was about a year and a half ahead of me. Dave was a young, developing trial lawyer, but he had the makings of a very fine and very strong trial lawyer.
I believe he's been an attorney for over 45 years.
And he's not quite retired, but yet he's not quite given up the practice of law because he thoroughly loves the law.
He's primarily devoted his practice to workers' compensation as a plaintiff representing the injured worker.
Dave is really a broad-minded trial lawyer that looks to advance the profession and at the same time give the very best representation possible for his client.
I sustained an injury while active duty, and it also prevented me from being able to do my job as I had for 20 years. Dave hired me out of law school because I think he was very interesting in the way I'd rehabilitated myself. Him allowing me to do that, though, and still I stay associated with him with, workers' compensation cases. I refer to him, any case that comes into my office on an injured worker or personal injury case. I refer to Mr. Dunaway because, I know how he's going to take care of his client and work for his client.
That's the biggest reason I nominated Dave, is because I think he really believes in his injured clients, and he wants to get them the most compensation possible under the law. He's always looking for ways to help them not only get the most they can, but be rehabilitated. I also think that he's been involved with the Second Injury Fund and getting that funded and working with that.
One of my first clients as an associate attorney, it was really interesting. He developed bladder cancer due to exposure years after retiring. So through that case, constitutional challenges established the law that the date of injury in a disease case was the manifestation of the injury, not the last day of exposure. And that was really to protect the worker, because if they retired and then developed a disease, years down the road, that would have affected so many workers that wouldn't have been able to recover further disease or injury that was caused by exposure at work, but that didn't manifest until years later. So I know Dave and myself worked diligently on that case, and it was a good outcome.
You can always learn from Dave by watching him try his lawsuits, watching him make his arguments before the judges with his legal theories about how to maximize recovery. Dave was the type of lawyer that might have a workman's compensation case from Kentucky, which is secondary authority in Tennessee, But he was not afraid to argue that if it supported his position, and even if it was contrary to Tennessee law, because he would have the brass to ask the court to consider changing the law to where his client could win. Dave had a goal, number one, to help his client, and number two, the system was such that it was difficult to help his client, so he challenged the system. And very few lawyers are reluctant to be that type of forward thinking and challenge the system. He believed in their injuries in the sense that they needed to be compensated, and he always worked the hardest to get the most dollars he could for his clients because he had a lot of compassion and empathy for them. He wanted them to be made whole as best as he could and under the workers' comp law.
His one asset that probably makes him so good at what he does is he's overly prepared. He's overzealous, zealous representation. And the word zealous probably doesn't even describe enough the representation that Dave gives to his clients. If there is a next legal step to be taken, he will take it. Even if a case is not worth monetarily that much, I've never seen him turn down a case. If there's an injured worker, there's an injured worker. Mr. Dunaway has stayed apprised of the changes in the law and has really worked diligently to make sure that the name workers' compensation for the injured worker, has remained forefront in his practice as protecting the injured worker. And that's what he's worked to do.
He's also got the ability to recognize when a case is not the strongest, because I've had him come in and say sometimes that, hey, we've got 3 or 4 cases against us in the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals. Dave was quite innovative in his thinking. And I was thinking, Dave is a year out of law school, and if he can do that, well, I can do that too. Because when you're in law school, sometimes you wonder if there's some magic trick about trying lawsuits of which you're unaware that you will learn the hard way. And what I saw in Dave's work as a young lawyer was that if you research the law and you prepare yourself and you prepare your clients, then you can successfully try lawsuits, even though you don't have the ability that other great trial lawyers have, but you can try lawsuits of great trial lawyers and even beat them. There's
nobody that probably receives more calls from other attorneys that maybe, hey, I've got I don't normally do workers' compensation, but I've got a family member that was injured, or, step me through this. And he's always more than willing to donate his expertise, and he's always willing to help and mentor, other attorneys in the process. I have found through Dave's training with me, mentoring of me, that the more thorough you are, the more confident you are of your case. Dave, as a mentor and as a colleague, has encouraged me and inspired me in my work here in Oliver Springs, my practice of law. Mr. Dunaway's always been, workers' compensation is just that. It's compensation for the injured worker. And that's the side he's always worked on. And I can't think of anybody more deserving for this award than Mr. Dunaway.
Chelsea Searcy is really a highly motivated, ambitious young lady that comes to us at Davidson Transit Organization as a strong workers' compensation claims manager, but most importantly, I think she has a really, really strong passion for people. And I think that's what makes her so uniquely distinct from others is, you can have a ton of experience in a profession, but in this particular profession, in workers' compensation, it really is about having a passion for people and positive results. So Chelsea started her workers' comp career as an operations specialist at Travelers. In just a little over a year, she was promoted to investigative case manager. And then I think that's really where she started to learn the ropes. She was quickly promoted to the return to work case manager. And let me tell you, This is where her hands-on experience immediately made a difference for us. Let's face this harsh reality. When an employee is injured on the job, it can be extremely stressful for them. And I can only imagine the litany of questions that will probably pop up in their head. You know, am I going to get better? Will I be dealing with this injury for the rest of my life? Am I going to get fired? Can I afford to miss work? Does anybody care? I've just heard from countless employees who have asked these wide range of kind of gut-wrenching questions that need an answer from an employer. And most often, because no one from the job reaches out to them, they feel ignored. So from her first start date, she made it a point to reach out to the employees to, if nothing more than to express, we care. We're here. Your job is still here. We're going to get you the care that you need. And I think that had an immediate impact on not just our numbers in terms of claims and what we're paying in claims, but just the culture of people believing that we were here and our department was here to help them through it. She's got a really unique style. She really believes that working quickly in a rapidly evolving environment is essential to staying on top of everything. It's when things start to slide through the cracks. That's when workers start to feel like they're being ignored or they're not getting the care that they feel that they deserve. So she's able to stay on top of all the nuances of keeping, medical teams and doctors and nurses and different departments within our organization all abreast of what's happening. I think Chelsea is a natural leader rather than micromanage them. Chelsea has been working to instill a culture in our organization that's based on trust. There was not a lot of trust in our workers' compensation program prior to her coming. Her building that trust and getting folks back fully recovered and back to work has been incredible. There was a claim we were working, and the employee really felt that Chelsea was not connecting well. And so I pulled Chelsea in, and I was driving Chelsea to make a more empathetic approach and look at it from a different angle. And she kept saying to me, but Nick, I think this is happening. I think she is trying to use our kindness against us. And I didn't understand it at the time. But later I saw that Chelsea's approach was the correct way. While I think it is important to lead from a position of empathy, sometimes our empathy can be used against us and we make bad decisions because we're trying so hard to lead through empathy. And it made me back up and say, wow, I've got to check my own ideologies and my own way of approaching cases and claims to make sure that I'm looking at it holistically. Ultimately, the goal is always to have the employee understand that we care about them and we want them to recover and get back to work. But also, we got to make sure that we are not letting employees manipulate us with their circumstance so that we make a bad decision when it comes to a claim. A leader doesn't always have the answers. A leader doesn't always know what to do, but a true leader does find the people that know and can compensate their weaknesses and create an overall strength for the organization. She recruited others that could, take some of the slack away. And I think that helped me to see that even when she couldn't respond to something herself, then she just built the team around her to hold up her weaknesses. I really see her investing in the next generation of leaders. And I think that's important. And I really have seen Chelsea inspire and give them the tools and the ability for her to be able to pass the torch to them. And I see the next group of leaders already in our organization because of her efforts. I think back to the first recipient of the Sue Ann Head Award, Terry Hill. And I think about how he drafted legislation that later became known as the Workers' Compensation Reform Act of 1992. I think about Shirley Vincent, and her collaborative efforts in the Guardian Medical Consulting group, and how they manage not only the injured workers, but the medical team and the employers. I reflect on Jody Barnes and Bob Pitts, the most recent recipient, and their impact. And I feel that Chelsea's contributions to our staff and the direct impact to the community is not outside of being mentioned with these other great leaders. Our mission statement is connecting people to their lives and community. So we pick someone up at point A and take them to point B. And that point B may be the grocery store or a doctor's appointment or a loved one's house, their grandchildren's house, things that they need in order to survive. So when we have an injured worker that's not able to carry out our mission, that really does directly impact the community in which we live. And I've seen those other award recipients impact their organization and their community. And I feel that Chelsea really does stand in the same vein of them. I've seen her experience excitement and frustration. I've seen her experience elation and dejection. I've seen her experience strength and timidity. But what I've never seen her waver on is her commitment to helping our employees recover, get back to full-time work. And like it's so often said of Sue Ann Head, Chelsea too leads with her mind and teaches with her heart.